Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto's Kekkei Genkai made family regret and won Kurenai? Episode 1. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, after years of being overlooked and underestimated, Naruto is about to awaken a rare Kekkei Genkai that will force everyone who doubted him to question everything they believed. Now, let's start. If you two keep progressing at this rate, I might teach you guys the Rasengan when you graduate the academy. Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha no Sato, spoke happily while looking down at his two children. Narumi Namikaze, the lone sister of the two. She had Minato's bright blue eyes, generating warmth and happiness. She had a head of brightly colored red hair, matching her mother's perfectly. Minato gave a wide grin as he switched his eyes over to his other child, Natsu Namikaze, his spiky red hair already falling into his purple eyes. He was more like his mother, with his hot-headed attitude, while Narumi was more playful, but calm and collective when the need arises. Natsu was the firstborn, taking the place as the clan heir of the Namikaze name. Both children looked up at their father, their 6-year-old eyes shining with pride and happiness at being praised by their father. "Really, Two-san, you mean it?" Narumi said happily, her body jumping up and down in excitement. Natsu's smile threatened to split his face, his eyes shining. "Just watch, Two-san. We will pass you soon." Minato barked out a laugh, smiling wide as his eyes closed due to his laughter. "Don't think it'll be that easy. I'm still the Hokage after all. I don't know, Minato-kun, after they master the Kyuubi's chakra they might be stronger than us both." Kushina Namikaze, the wife of Minato, also known by her allies Red Death. She came out into the backyard to see her smiling family. She was filled with joy. They all broke out into laughter again, their hearts filled with happiness. Unknown to them, were the sad blue eyes looking down at them from the second-story window. This was Naruto Namikaze, the third-born child of both Minato and Kushina. He had his blonde spiky hair, and with bright cerulean blue eyes. Looking so much like his father. His lips came down into a frown, looking at his family made his heart hurt. It wasn't until his 4th birthday that his siblings started to get special treatment. They got extra training, early lessons at the academy, presents for doing just about anything. Naruto wanted nothing more than to join them, to be a part of the family he desperately needed. It was always the same excuse. "Sorry Naruto, maybe next time. Don't make a scene Naruto, you're embarrassing your siblings. They need to learn how to handle the Kyuubi's chakra. That damned chakra," Naruto thought, his anger getting the better of him. Since birth, Natsu and Narumi were given part of the Kyuubi's chakra that Minato sealed within them. Getting split in half, and shared between both of them. While Naruto got nothing, only having the regular chakra reserves of a normal Uzumaki, while still a lot, nothing like his siblings. "I guess I'm just not special enough," Naruto whispered, letting it echo in his tiny room. He turned his head away from his family. His heart hurting just from the mere sight of their smiles. He walked over to his window, opening it, allowing a nice cool breeze to flow in. One foot after another he stepped outside, slowly making his way down to his front yard. He gave a small frown back to his house, his eyes started to glisten. He turned away, shoving his hands into his black shorts and started walking down the streets of Konoha. Shops were flourishing with life, and the streets were very crowded. Laughing and talking echoed down the streets as people walked, in no hurry to get to their destination. Naruto gave a sad sigh. It wasn't the first time that he walked these streets, and it wasn't the first time he got utterly ignored. No one spared him a second glance, even with his family he was left to the side, forgotten. While he sometimes enjoyed the alone time, it hurt seeing his siblings get pampered while he got nothing. Sure, they had the Kyuubi's chakra, but there are plenty of famous shinobi that aren't Jinchuriki. i.e., Minato Namikaze, his Two-san. He didn't have an ego, far from it. He just wanted to be seen as the son of the Yondaime, to be acknowledged. Not just a random child walking the streets. Naruto continued his walk with his mood turning more sour by the minute. He finally made it to his favorite spot in the village, Training Ground 99, hidden just next to the Hokage monument past the head of Hashirama Senju, the Shodai Hokage. Naruto walked into the center of the training field. On his left was a small little pond formed from a small little waterfall flowing down from the rocks above. He closed his eyes adopting a thinking pose, raising his hand up forming a hand seal. After a few long minutes a small blue aura surrounded Naruto. It was weak, about the size of an average civilian using chakra. And after a couple seconds it vanished. Naruto gave out a frustrated cry, his hands rummaging through his blonde hair. Damn it. Why can't I do it? You're not letting it flow through your coils, you're just forcing your chakra through. Naruto spun around at the new voice, a small amount of fear creeping up inside him. He looked over and from a small forest clearing walked out a man. He was wearing a short black shirt with a very wide collar, with black shinobi pants to match. He had bandages going from his feet to his lower legs, with blue sandals. He had a small over-the-shoulder brown strap, holding his sword in place on his back. He had his Konoha headband wrapped proudly around his forehead. The man smiled down at Naruto, his onyx eyes shining with mirth. He crossed his arms over his chest. You're not letting your chakra flow. Instead of forcing it through your coils, try and control the amount of chakra you admit. Pushing it through would only cause backlash. Naruto was still a little defensive, but it did make sense what the man was saying. Taking a few steps back he raised his hand forming the familiar hand seal. He closed his eyes taking in a deep breath as he felt his chakra pool start to sway. Slowly but surely he released a small amount into his coils. The small blue aura returned as before, lasting much longer as it now started to lift small pebbles from the ground. About 5 minutes went by and Naruto fell to the ground exhausted. He tried to catch his breath as he looked back over his shoulder. The man was still there, a big smile on his face as he clapped his hands together. Great job. That was a huge improvement. Naruto silently beamed at the praise, making his insides flutter with joy. Thanks, mister. You're awesome. The man waved his hand, his smile never faltering. Don't worry about it, I'm always glad to help young shinobi in training. Naruto's face lit up at the idea of being a shinobi, making him practically shine in excitement. He pumped his fists together, now sitting on the floor looking up at the man. Yeah, one day I'll be the strongest shinobi ever. The man let out a loud laugh, making Naruto frown at him. His eyes narrowed as he pointed at the man. Hey mister, what's so funny? The man wiped a tear away from one of his eyes, his laughter having died down. Just you have a long way to go, kid. But you remind me of myself when I was young, it brought back a lot of memories. The man took a seat across from the blonde, crossing his legs in the process. And please enough with calling me mister, it's making me feel old, I'm only 17 after all. You can call me Shisui, Uchiha Shisui. Naruto felt his eyes go wide, and Uchiha. They were one of the most prestigious clans to walk on Konoha soils. No, through the elemental nations. Naruto looked up at the now identified Shisui in awe. Amazing. So do you have one of those red-eye things? The older male nodded, a smile gracing his lips. He pointed up to his eyes. It's called the Sharingan. And yes, most Uchiha are born with the Dujutsu, it's our bloodline. Naruto tilted his head to the side, a long blonde lock falling in between his eyes. He narrowed his eyes in concentration, a bloodline. What's that? Shisui raised an eyebrow in shock, not letting it leak through into his expression. Shisui knew who the boy was, Naruto Namikaze, son of the beloved Yondaime. From his time working for the Anbu, He heard that the Hokage's children were already getting early lessons from the academy before they enroll. Shouldn't Naruto understand the basics of being a shinobi by now? Well, a bloodline is a unique trait or abilities passed on genetically. You know the Hyuga clan, right? Naruto nodded. Well, they have a bloodline, it's called the Byakugan. It gives them the ability to see far distances, through objects, and can even see around them in 360 degrees. Shisui looked on to see Naruto listening intently, his small bright blue eyes wider than saucers. Wow, so what does yours do, Shisui-san? Shisui smiled wide. Our bloodline is called the Sharingan. It allows us to track our opponent's moves, counter-attack, cast a genjutsu with just a simple glance, and even copy other jutsus. Wow, the Sharingan sounds so strong. Are you strong too, Shisui-san? The taller male smiled awkwardly, his free hand rubbing the back of his neck. Well, I would say I'm about an average shinobi. No stronger than our village's average Junin, he said with a chuckle. While he was one of the top-rated Anbu that have enlisted in the past 10 years, he tried to keep things more on the humble side. Unlike his Uchiha brethren who have taken a slice of the arrogance cake. He was grateful for his Sharingan, he understood the weight it held as a shinobi tool. Naruto's loud tone broke him out of his thoughts. The blonde continued talking while Shisui sat and listened, throwing in his 2 cents whenever it was needed. He looked up to the sky, it was already dark, maybe somewhere around 8 p.m. Hey Naruto, don't you need to get home? It's already past 8, your parents must be worried. Naruto gave a low frown. His shoulders lowering down and his head staying stationary. Upon seeing this, Shisui cast a worried glance in Naruto's direction. Hey Naruto, you okay? Naruto refused to look into Shisui's eyes. He didn't want the same ignorant glance he would receive whenever he spoke about his family. Tu-san and Ka-san probably don't even realize that I'm gone. They are too busy with Narumi and Natsumi to pay much attention to me, Naruto spoke, his words shocking Shisui. Shisui adopted a gaze of worry. Why would the son of the Yondaime say something that sounded so untrue? What do you mean, Naruto? Are you saying your parents don't notice you? Naruto nodded, his tiny hands clenched into fists. They already started training Narumi and Natsumi. I haven't got anything since my 4th birthday, just after they started training them. Shisui felt his eyes go wide, he couldn't believe what he just heard. He felt a sudden spark of anger course through him, and an even smaller layer of disappointment. I can't believe Yondaime-sama and Kushina-sama would do this to Naruto. Why would they, of course? Narumi-san and Natsu-san are Jinchuriki, the Uchiha thought with disdain. That explains why the boy was always out on his own, and how he didn't know what a bloodline was, and by his struggle to maintain his chakra. He hasn't even unlocked it yet. He's probably feeling like he doesn't belong in that family. And tomorrow, October 10th. Hey Naruto. Come over here. Naruto did as he was told, taking a few hesitant steps over to the Uchiha, refusing to look up to the taller man. Naruto felt his blonde hair get pushed up. He felt a strong hand tangle itself within his locks. He looked up to see Shisui's hand on his head. His eyes shining with warmth, giving him an affectionate ruffle of his hair. Shisui smiled down at Naruto. How about I meet you back here tomorrow at around noon? And I can help you with the basics of being a shinobi. Naruto looked up wide-eyed. His stomach fluttering at the warm look gazing at him. It felt so foreign to him to receive anything other than the cold shoulder. Why would you do that for me? Naruto muttered. Shisui chuckled, letting his free hand gently scratch his cheek. I've taken a liking to you, kid, and I can see your potential to become a powerful shinobi. Naruto felt his eyes start to water, his stomach doing flips as he felt happiness touch his very core. He went so long without a mere smile. He crashed his small body against Shisui's torso for a tight hug. The Uchiha was slightly surprised, but realized the situation rather quickly and offered a small reassuring pat on the back. Naruto let out a quiet sob. "Arigato Shisui-san." His voice was muffled as he talked into the man's black shirt. Shisui chuckled. "It's no problem at all, Naruto." Morning came quick to Naruto. After meeting Shisui at Training Ground 99 last night, the promise to see each other the next day was fresh on his mind when he got home. Like he told the Uchiha, when he got home no one batted an eyelash. When he walked through the front door, he could still see his family in the backyard, in the middle of a full-on picnic. He would be lying if he said it didn't hurt seeing his family laugh without him. But his mood was significantly better than it has been for the past 3 years, so he raced upstairs and quickly got to bed. Falling asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. He woke up at about 7 a.m., unable to hold his excitement any longer. He never left his room. He knew he wouldn't get called down to breakfast. He ignored the stinging pain in his heart as he opened one of the 4 textbooks he had in his small room and started reading. Learning all about the beginning stages of chakra, and how it affects your body, and the 5 major chakra types. Fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning. He continued his reading for what seemed like days. Finally glancing over to his clock, looking for the time. 11:45. He jumped out of bed, quickly grabbing a new set of clothes and leaving his room in a hurry. His footsteps echoed throughout his house as he ran down the stairs rather loudly. When he got to the bottom of the staircase he was greeted to a few familiar faces in his living room. His parents were talking to a shinobi who wore a mask covering half his face, his headband covering one of his eyes. He didn't quite remember his name though. He saw his brother and sister talking to Jiraiya Oji and Tsunade Ba. 2 of the remaining legendary Sennin who have been there since the beginning of his birth. He looked upwards, his mouth dropping agape as he read the giant sign hanging in the wall. "Happy birthday Narumi and Natsu." Naruto felt his heart drop in his stomach. A feeling of pure sadness pumped in his veins as he read the large banner. They forgot to put my name. My birthday." He couldn't stop the sudden cascade of tears that started to break out. He was so caught up in his time with Shisui he forgot about his birthday the very next day, and it seemed like all did as well. Without waiting another moment he ran full sprint to his front door, opening it wide and slamming it shut behind him. Knowing full well that no one would question it, or question where he was. He ran to the training ground, running as fast as his little legs could. Like usual the onlookers paid him no mind. The pain was sudden, all the built-up grief he stored away for the past few years breaking through its cage, griping at his heart. Making his stomach feel heavy. He arrived at the training ground in record time. He fell to his knees the second he reached the center, his hand covering his mouth swallowing a sob. Naruto. Naruto, are you okay? Naruto looked up to see Shisui running at him, the older Uchiha having arrived about 10 minutes early only to see Naruto run inside the clearing crying. Naruto wasted no time and propelled himself into Shisui for another hug, his small hands gripping the older male's black shirt desperately, giving out a loud cry of pain. "They forgot me, Shisui-san. They forgot me on my birthday." Shisui felt his anger from last night's return tenfold. He tightened the hug around the blonde, quietly asking him to explain what exactly happened. Naruto then sadly told him of his experience, not missing a single detail. His sudden hiccups interrupted his words, but Shisui understood everything perfectly. Shisui waited until Naruto's crying came to a halt. After a few moments he pushed himself away, with Naruto rubbing his eyes with his hand. "Hey Naruto-kun." The boy looked up to see Shisui's outstretched arm. All he saw was a semi-large wrapped box, with an orange bow on the top. Naruto sniffled and looked up at Shisui in confusion. Shisui rubbed the back of his neck. "I was going to wait to give this to you later. But I want to give it to you now." Naruto hesitantly grabbed the box from his hands. Making sure his vision was clear enough, he slowly started to open the box. He removed the top part and his eyes shined with surprise, reflecting off his drying tears. Inside the box was an old Konoha no Sato headband. The metal plate was slightly damaged, and the cloth around it was a solid green, showing the age. Naruto looked up at Shisui. The latter already knew what Naruto was gonna say. He reached his arm out and ruffled Naruto's hair once again. "It's my birthday gift to you. That's my old headband from when I graduated the academy. I wanted you to have it." Naruto felt a fresh batch of tears forming around his eyes. He took the headband out of the box and held it close to his chest, the first real gift he ever received, and one he will treasure until the day he dies. He hugged the headband tightly to his heart, his previous pain momentarily forgotten as he looked up, seeing the warm gaze of Shisui. "Shisui-Nisan, thank you so much." The Uchiha ruffled his hair one last time before getting to his feet, his hands resting behind his head. "Now let's get to it. You aren't gonna get stronger by sitting there doing nothing." Naruto quickly got to his feet, following Shisui, wiping his eyes for any sign of crying. "Hi Shisui-Nisan." Shisui chuckled, and proceeded to teach Naruto the basics of chakra control, and how to properly channel the chakra in your body. He looked at Naruto fondly, getting attached to the boy rather quickly. Breaking out into a goofy smile at his new nickname. "Nisan, huh? That doesn't sound so bad." It's been 3 months since Shisui had taken Naruto under his wing. Naruto had started to make slow, but amazing progress. While he wasn't genin level in terms of strength yet, he was 10 times better than he was a few months ago. Shisui already finished teaching the blonde all about the basics of a shinobi, from chakra control to elemental jutsu, and the different types of methods that shinobi can battle with. While learning these methods, he and Shisui found the ones best suited for Naruto's future. While Naruto wasn't big on fuinjutsu, which would have probably made his parents frown, he found unrequited love for genjutsu and ninjutsu. He wasn't keen on learning kenjutsu, and taijutsu is a must for any shinobi for hand-to-hand combat. Another trait that Naruto excelled in was, surprisingly, chakra control. After learning the fundamentals with Shisui, he was given a task to expand his chakra pool along with learning how to control it. And after the 3 months he already completed the tree walking exercise and water walking. Feel the chakra flow through your body, not too much to overload your coils. Naruto, who was sitting in the center of his room, thought to himself, looking at the long sprawled out blue scroll that was open in front of him. His eyes scanned over the scroll for what seemed like the 100th time. This scroll was a gift given to him by Shisui about 1 week ago. It was his first attempt at a real jutsu, not the basic academy jutsu like Bunshin, Kawarimi, and Henge. No, this was his first attempt at a real nature manipulation jutsu. Having figured out what chakra nature he held, Shisui gave me a scroll to work on that corresponded with his nature. Flashback. Okay Naruto, this is called chakra paper. This will help you figure out what chakra nature you have. Naruto reached out and grabbed the paper from Shisui's hands. It was small, no bigger than his palm. He gave a frown and looked at the paper with skeptical eyes. How will paper help with nature chakra? Shisui chucked and reached into his pouch to pull out a second piece of paper. Well, let me finish, Baka. Naruto sent a glare his way. This paper is special. It's made from a special tree that has chakra running through it constantly. With even a tiny drop of chakra, this paper will tell you exactly what chakra nature you have. Or in other words, chakra affinity. Naruto took a few moments to process the information. After seeing Naruto nod, he continued. Now Naruto-kun, watch. Just as Naruto had Shisui's paper in his sights, the Uchiha sent a small pulse of chakra into the chakra paper and it ignited into a small ball of fire before crumbling to ash in Shisui's palm. Naruto looked on shocked. As you clearly saw, my paper caught fire, meaning that my chakra affinity is fire. If your paper wrinkles up, then you have lighting. If it becomes wet and soggy, then you have water. If it splits in half, then you have wind, and if your paper turns to dirt and crumbles away, then you have earth. Naruto nodded, finally understanding. He looked down at the chakra paper in front of him. He sent a small pulse of chakra, and the result surprised him. The paper was now completely drenched with water, the paper falling limp in his palm. Even Shisui raised an eyebrow in surprise. So that means I have a water affinity. Shisui nodded, his hand coming up to rub his chin. Yes. And a pretty strong one at that. Which is odd since I'm pretty sure neither of your parents have an affinity for water. You developed this all on your own, kid, he said with a chuckle, making Naruto beam. He reached into his pouch once again and pulled out a small blue scroll. Here, this is a D rank water ninjutsu. I have a mission to go to, but I'll be back within the week. But I want you prancing this while I'm gone. Flashback end. And practice Naruto did. Every waking moment was spent learning this low-level jutsu. The technique was water style, spitting fish. A low D rank ninjutsu that was mainly taught to academy students who lived in Kiri. It was a fairly simple jutsu, where the user lets out a single jet of water from the mouth. While not used for real battles, its main purpose used for infiltration missions and gaining people's attention. Okay, only 2 hand seals. Inu, Ram. Water style, spitting fish. Suddenly a small jet of water shot from his mouth, shooting off into his bedroom wall. It wasn't strong enough to create a dent, but the water dripping down was a sign of his success. Naruto's eyes lit up. He did it, he finished his first elemental jutsu. I did it. I finally did it, Shisui-Nisan is gonna be so proud. Hey Naruto, keep it down up there. Now hurry and get down here, dinner's almost ready. Naruto faltered slightly at being addressed by his yelling mother downstairs. It was the first time he's been called down for dinner all week. Suddenly a light bulb appeared over Naruto. Maybe he could finally show what he was capable of to his parents. Maybe they could finally start training him. Naruto raced downstairs to see his siblings already seated at the table, his 2 also seated listening intently to what they were saying. As usual, his family didn't say anything about his presence in the room, and if they noticed him, they didn't show it. He took the first seat he could, at the end of the table, so his Ka-san could sit next to 2-san. 2-san, Ka-san. Guess what I learned today? Naruto yelled, practically jumping in his seat. He didn't feel the annoying looks his siblings sent his way. Minato raised an eyebrow, finally seeing Naruto since he arrived at the dinner table. When did Naruto get here? Whatever it is, I'm sure it can wait. Naruto. Natsu and Narumi were in the middle of telling me about their training with Ka-san today. Naruto felt his face start to fall. Am I really not important enough to them? That they won't even let me talk? Then Kakashi-Nisan said that it was already about high genin level. Narumi yelled happily, with Natsu nodding his head along enthusiastically. Naruto saw his father smile wide. It felt like a knife was plunged deep into his heart. You guys are progressing so fast. How about after dinner me and your mother show you those fire and wind techniques we promised you both? Naruto snapped his head to his father in utter shock. His eyes went wide as the 2 remaining children yelled happily, yes please 2-san. I already mastered that low-level fire jutsu you gave to me last week. Natsu said loudly, making Naruto physically flinch. They already started training with their chakra nature. Kushina came up to the table, a big bowl of steaming ramen placed in the center, a huge goofy smile on her face. Oh yes, our little shinobis in training are doing just wonderful. Naruto listened to his family happily talk about how far Narumi and Natsu were along. And it only reminded Naruto by how weak he was in comparison. Sure, he had Shisui now, and he's been the happiest he has ever been in the last few months. But seeing this, his family was a constant reminder by how far behind Naruto really was. He was a shadow that the Namikaze family wanted to forget. He clenched his fists under the table, trying hard not to let any tears get by. Unlucky for him, Natsu saw his Ototo's sudden attitude change. While Natsu was slightly curious why his mother and father never really gave Naruto any attention, and always refused the idea of training Naruto whenever he asked. He came to the simple conclusion a long time ago, that he and Narumi were just more special than Naruto. They were the Jinchuriki of the most powerful Biju. Of course they would need all the attention they could get. An ordinary child doesn't need all the extra help. He felt a smug grin glide across his face, not realizing how the next few moments will drastically affect Naruto. Ah, is my Ototo sad that his siblings are so much stronger than him? Naruto closed his eyes tight, a few tears leaking out. Unknown to him, his mother and father were slightly worried about his sudden shift of attitude. Natsu felt Narumi elbow him in the side telling him to stop. That didn't deter Natsu. Of course, why would our parents waste time on such a loser like you? Shut up. Naruto yelled, his eyes opening wide as he tried his best to glare at his brother, each word felt like a dagger slowly slicing him up. He heard his parents try and get Natsu to stop. But nothing stopped his onslaught. That's right, Baka, you're a weak loser that nobody likes. And when I'm the clan heir, I'll make sure you get what you deserve and take you out of the clan. Shut up. Without warning, Naruto's chakra began to fluctuate, his hands moving at academy-level speeds and using the jutsu he learned just an hour ago. Water style. Spitting fish. The small jet of water went ahead and shot itself over at Natsu, hitting him right between the eyes. His sudden rant was closed to a halt as he fell backwards, stumbling to keep his balance, bumping into Narumi and taking both down to the ground. Unfortunately, Narumi's leg caught the tablecloth and sent the large oversized pot of ramen to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. Both parents reacted almost instantly, with Minato catching his falling kids while Kushina grabbed Naruto out of the way of the falling ramen. Minato helped his kids to the floor, making sure they were on their feet before looking back at Naruto. Minato sent a cold glare to his son, hoping it would come off fatherly. How wrong he was. Naruto. I don't know where you learned that, but you never, and I mean never, use jutsu like that out of a spar. You could have seriously injured your brother. Naruto's terror-stricken face morphed into fear. His father's cold eyes looked down at him while his mother looked over her two kids for any damages. But T2. No buts. I want you to apologize for attacking your brother like that right now. Minato said, his arm pointing over to Natsu. While Natsu wasn't in any pain, he was shocked to see the use of a water jutsu. He heard his sister mutter how disappointed she was in them both. But he didn't care, he kept his smug grin as he watched his little brother try and apologize to him. Naruto couldn't stop the sudden tears. He was getting yelled at, not the brother who called him useless, weak and a loser to the clan. He couldn't find his voice, his tongue now felt big in his mouth. All words gone, and now fear and sadness flashed in his eyes as he looked at his father. An angry and disappointed glare looking at the 8-year-old. IMSS. Minato shook his head irritated, that's it. Naruto, go to your room. Since you want apologize, you get no dinner today. I expect an apology to the whole family come breakfast tomorrow morning. Minato said, his eyes narrowing at the blonde. Do I make myself clear? Naruto nodded frantically. Without saying a single word, he ran upstairs and into his small room. The looks of disappointment and anger he received by his family were now etched into his brain forever. He curled up in his messy bed, his tears staining the sheets as he sobbed silently. It wasn't fair, all he wanted was a family to love him. Naruto sniffled, grabbing the headband that Shisui gave to him and hugging it to his chest. Only Shisui Nisan truly cared about him. He is the only family he had. He finally saw the reality, how sick he was to think that this was a family. The words of Natsu snapping gently into place. He would prove them wrong, he would get strong without their help. He opened his bloodshot eyes, pushing the headband upwards and wrapping it around his forehead. Pushing back his depression and changing it to determination. He will grow stronger, he has Shisui Nissan in the academy. He didn't need special treatment, he didn't need this so-called family. Using his arm he wiped away his remaining tears. I'll become strong. I swear it. Water style. Water clone jutsu. 2 identical clones made of pure water formed at Naruto's feet. All 3 held kunai as they sprinted off towards Shisui. The lone Uchiha grinned widely as he easily dispatched both clones with a soft kick to the chest. He sidestepped Naruto's attempt to kick his stomach, taking advantage of Naruto's new opening, grabbing the blonde's leg, throwing him over his back. Naruto wasted no time as he performed a quick kawarimi appearing to Shisui's left side. The Uchiha bent his back backwards sending a sweep kick under Naruto's leg making the blonde fall to the floor. Shisui moved his body until he was atop Naruto, arm around his neck in a choke hold. The whole time his goofy grin never left his face, as he watched the blonde struggle under his weight. That was better. You're differently improving, my little turtle. Naruto scowled, his face pressed up against the forest floor attempting to gare at his sensei. I said stop calling me that. Shisui only smiled as he pushed Naruto deeper into the ground. And honestly Turtle-chan, a genjutsu, on an Uchiha. I've taught you better than that. Naruto's body then sunk into the ground, turning into blades of grass while Shisui used his signature jutsu, the Shunshin technique. Or the body flicker. In a sudden flash he was about 10 feet away, his elbow extended out seemingly hitting air. Suddenly Naruto's body appeared from what looked like nowhere and flew across the training ground and impacted with the nearest tree. He spat out a small amount Sylvia, leaving a pretty decent-sized dent in the tree. Naruto gave an audible groan. His arm coming up to rub his chest, his ribs felt like crap. He looked up to see his sensei kneeling down at him. His arms resting on his knees as he grinned at Naruto. I'm proud that you managed to get that genjutsu down so fast. Naruto gave a silly grin. In the past year since the sudden falling out of his family he had been spending more and more time with Shisui. The young Anbu managed to take some time off of his shinobi duties to help train Naruto, and while he was more experienced than the highest academy student, he was only slightly a genin-level shinobi. It wasn't too bad. The only real issue was understanding how the jutsu worked. He spoke as he rubbed the back of his neck. A mannerism he picked up by hanging around with Shisui. The hidden person genjutsu, mainly used for assassination missions. It was AC rank genjutsu that focused more on the fundamentals of genjutsu itself. It wasn't just how good your chakra control was, it was understanding how the cerebral nervous system works in order to manipulate your opponent's 5 major senses. Any shinobi could perform genjutsu, it was how precise your chakra control was to really make the illusion convincing. Shisui gave a nod of his head, watching Naruto get to his feet. He crossed his arms over his chest. So Naruto, how's the academy going? Have you learned anything yet? Naruto shrugged his shoulders, his eyes flashing suddenly with annoyance. It's been about a year now that Naruto was enrolled in the Shinobi Academy along with his siblings, and all the clan heirs from the major clans in the village. And like usual, no one batted an eyelash in his direction. Even the teacher of his class was shocked when he read his name, apparently thinking there were only 2 Namikaze children. And speaking of the 2 Namikaze children, last year, during the first real fight he had with his family and hitting Natsu right between the eyes with his jutsu. The next morning he was forced to apologize to his brother and sister. While Natsu got off scot-free, no punishment, no scolding. Just an imaginary slap on the wrist while Naruto was grounded for 2 weeks, with only a limited amount of food at his disposal. He wasn't allowed to go out to eat with them, not like they would have noticed anyway, or go shopping. I haven't learned anything at all. All we have been doing is stupid leaning exercises. Stuff we all already know about. Naruto huffed angrily as he crossed his arms over his chest, earning a laugh from Shisui. The Uchiha looked down at Naruto, a grin appearing on his face as he ruffled the blonde's hair. Naruto pouted up at Shisui. I know that the academy is super boring right now, but they do teach you the basics of being a shinobi. Naruto scoffed at that, forcefully removing Shisui's hand from his hair. You already taught me the basics. Hell, more than half the class are from major clans in Konoha, who already know the basics. Naruto said, taking a seat on the floor, crossing his arms with a huff. Shisui shrugged his shoulders as he leaned against the tree next to the blonde, looking at Naruto with a fond smile. Well, you still have a ways to go, Turtle-chan. It won't be easy getting all the way to the top. Naruto blushed deeply as he jumped to his feet, glaring at his sensei. Stop calling me that, damn it. Hey, it's not my fault I caught you playing with some turtles when I got here. Naruto huffed in annoyance as he tried to push down his growing blush. Shisui tried to fight back a laugh before giving in completely. After his laughter died down, he walked over to the blonde. He put one arm on his hip before letting out a deep sigh. Naruto looked up at his sensei and raised a confused eyebrow. That was strange, he had never seen Shisui do something like that before. Naruto started to feel uncomfortable at the sudden silence. He shifted in his seat before he opted to ask Shisui what he was doing. Before he could speak, Naruto jumped as Shisui suddenly snapped his fingers. That's it. What's it? Shisui chuckled as a large goofy grin spread across his face. Naruto suddenly felt a chill sneak its way to his spine. Whatever his sensei had come to realize would not be a pleasant one. So Naruto, Shui said, gaining the blonde's attention. Naruto gulped, suddenly feeling sick to his stomach. He looked around, making sure no one else was here before kneeling down and looked at Naruto deep in the eyes. If he noticed the sweat started to beat down Naruto's face, he didn't mention it. Shisui hummed as he flicked Naruto on the forehead, rather hard I may add. Naruto gave a cry of surprise, rubbing his now sore forehead before looking up and glaring at his sensei. His face beat red from embarrassment. Before he could yell at the older man, he saw a pretty good-sized scroll in his hands, thrusting it towards Naruto. Naruto had to lean back a bit to get a better look as it was a little too close. Naruto frowned in confusion as he grabbed the scroll from Shisui. Shisui-Nisan, what is this? He said before placing the scroll on the floor and unraveling it. Shisui laughed before taking a seat across the blonde. Well, I've been trying to think about the perfect thing to finally boost your training into overdrive. And this, he said pointing at the scroll, is what I have come up with. He finished and Naruto nodded his head in excitement. Once he opened the scroll fully, he placed his hand on the little ceiling array in front of him, channeling a small amount of chakra into it. A sudden poof went off and Naruto swung his hand in the arm, trying to rid the smoke that obscured his vision. After the smoke cleared, he finally was able to see what was inside. Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion, looking between Shisui and the revealed items. I don't understand. They look like big magnets. Naruto deadpanned, making Shui break out into a fit of laughter. Naruto frowned in confusion, he didn't know what was so funny. After Shisui regained his composure, he held up one of the magnets, as Naruto called them, and told the boy to stand up. Naruto did as he was told and Shisui went behind Naruto and began to tie the magnet around his legs. No baka, these are training weights. We're going to leave these on your body until you get accustomed to them. Naruto groaned as he felt his legs start to become heavy. He found it a lot harder to maintain his posture. He felt Shisui start to tie the remaining weight onto his arms now. I still don't get it. How is making me heavy, training? He said as he slumped his arms down from the sudden weight. These weights will get your body used to them, and once you get used to them you will feel that your muscles and body will have grown stronger. And you will see that once you take them off after a while your body will feel as light as a feather, making it real easy to move. Therefore making you faster. Naruto looked up dumbfounded. These simple weights did all that. That was incredible. Wow, that's amazing. So how long do I have to keep these on for? A few days? A month? 2 months? Shisui's sweat dropped at the rapid-fire questions as he waved his hand in the air, a devious smirk forming on his face. Oh, you know, only forever. Till we have to raise the amount. Naruto felt his face fall. His excitement evaporated almost instantly as he looked at upwards, his innocent eyes wide open. A deafening silence fell in the clearing as Naruto digested the words that were fed to him. F forever. Like E ever ever. Shisui nodded his head, trying his best not to bust out laughing. Well, of course, Turtle-chan. You have to keep raising the amount and keep them on constantly to get used to them. So get used to sleeping with them. Naruto finally gave in and fell to the ground, but he wasn't sure if it was because of the new weights on his body or his broken morale. Shisui rubbed the back of his head in amusement, lightly tapping the blonde with his foot to gain his attention as he picked up the second scroll that was with the weights. While on the ground, Naruto turned his head as he saw the scroll get picked up. He didn't even notice there was another scroll. Shisui placed it next to Naruto. Make sure you read this scroll. It's a B rank genjutsu that's pretty difficult to pull off. Now if you don't learn it by the time I come back from my mission, don't feel discouraged. He said. After knowing Naruto for the past year, he really started to understand the blonde on a deeper level. He knew that Naruto would likely start to feel insecure and tell himself he wasn't good enough if he didn't learn a jutsu quickly, especially if it was a B rank. Sure, it isn't the most difficult jutsu out there, it really was only a B rank since it used a good portion of chakra to cast it. But knowing Naruto, he would berate himself constantly for it. It is pretty complicated. So take your time with it, I'll only be gone for about 1 week. Naruto frowned as he picked himself off the ground, rather sluggish, still getting used to the large amount of weights on his body. He forgot that Shisui was supposed to leave on a mission today. Still, he was happy that he took time out of his busy day to come teach him a few things. But he would show Shisui that he could learn this jutsu with no problem. While he was more excited than usual since this would be his highest rated jutsu, it did send some nervousness into his system. But he would make sure to complete it, master it before he got back. Naruto grabbed the scroll and something finally dawned on him. Hey Shisui-Nisan, where did you get this scroll? You suddenly just had it with you. Shisui raised an eyebrow at the blonde before shaking his head. No. When I figured it out what to get you, I quickly left and threw the scroll together from home. Naruto's eyes grew to the size of saucers, his mouth falling open in shock as he stared starry-eyed at his sensei. Wait, you left. But I didn't see you move. Naruto screamed and Shisui gave a hearty laugh. Come on kid, they don't call me Shisui of the body flicker just for fun. He said with a grin as he saluted his student and with his free hand pointed at the scroll in Naruto's hand, making the blonde avert his eyes. Now make sure to study. See you in a week. Wait Shisui. Naruto looked back up to see that he was already gone. Not a single trace of Shisui left in sight. Naruto looked in awe, not believing his sensei was capable of something so cool. This only seemed to push Naruto more into proving that he was a capable shinobi. So without wasting any more time, he jumped into a seating position and unraveled the scroll. Not wanting to let any motivation go to waste. Now let's learn this jutsu. God, this is impossible. Naruto yelled as he threw his body backwards onto the forest floor. Looking up into the beautiful blue sky as he threw his arms out as well, they hit the ground with a loud thud as he still wasn't used to his new weights. Naruto huffed as he glared up at the sky, his eyes picking one cloud out of the many masses and sending a chilling glare its way. This is all your fault. This is supposed to be an easy genjutsu to learn, why can't you just work with me? He screamed at the cloud. His anger started to get the better as he yelled empty threats at the large mass of water vapor. It has been 5 days since Shui left on his mission and Naruto made basically zero progress on the jutsu. He clenched his fists in irritation. He managed to get the water clone jutsu down in 1 day. And the hidden person technique barely took him 2 days. He huffed in annoyance as he grabbed his hair in annoyance. "Ga stupid genjutsu," he said before sitting up. He pouted as he read the scroll for what felt like the millionth time. Perfect rainfall. An illusion which changes the atmosphere into sudden acid rainfall that burns one's skin if touched. Must use a good amount of chakra in order to perform this technique, needing enough to trick the sense of one's body. After glazing over the scroll one last time, he crossed his legs and performed the necessary hand seals. He channeled his chakra through his body, feeling it seamlessly pass through his coils. With one last sudden pulse he broke the hand seal, his face scrunching in concentration. He slowly opened his eyes as he glanced to the sky. The sky was now a dark gray in color, dark clouds overtook the setting sun shadowing it from view. Then he felt something wet fall onto his arm. One by one more droplets started to fall from the sky, soaking him from the sudden torrent of rainfall. Ignoring the rain, he looked back upwards to the same cloud he screamed at earlier, his face getting drenched as he scowled deeply. He picked up his scroll, raveling it back up before quickly making his way over to a small clearing he knew was near the training ground. It was some ways away, closer to training ground 13, but it would be the perfect spot to shelter himself from the rain for now. Pushing a bush out of his way, he stumbled into the clearing. There was a large open area with large trees outlining it. It had overtaken the area, growing high enough that the bark and leaves from the trees made it so rain could not fall onto this area. Only a small amount of light shone through the leaves, making the surroundings super dim. Naruto stopped his trek as he heard a kunai wince by, his eyes growing wide as he followed the sound only to see the weapon embed itself into a poorly made target on one of the trees. Looking back into the clearing, noticing a vague silhouette in the center. Letting his eyes adjust to the lighting, he was able to make out the Chunin uniform the person was wearing, along with a head of unkempt onyx hair. He saw her open her eyes, silently transfixed as bright ruby irises caught his attention. She abruptly jumped to her feet, kicking upwards. Her bright red pants captured his attention, not noticing her reach into the pouch on her waist and sending 3 more kunai into their designated targets. Jumping in the air with a flip, her legs extended out, smashing a target to pieces before spinning a kunai into her free hand. Using the blade, she stuck it into the ground, gripping the hilt and spun herself around, propelling herself back up into the air for extra momentum. Naruto watched in awe as he witnessed the woman train. He couldn't believe his eyes, he had never seen anything like this before. And before he knew, he had to shield his eyes as the clearing erupted brightly. A large fireball exploded into the clearing, lighting up the area. She sent another one in the sky, using the force to propel herself back down towards the ground. Naruto watched as she landed back onto the ground gracefully. Not a single flaw in her step or mistake in her posture. Naruto was starstruck at seeing first-hand fire manipulation. Shisui never used jutsu when they spared or showed off any of his skills other than taijutsu. So seeing real jutsu from somebody else was awesome. Before Naruto could expel his excitement, he felt something sharp go against his neck. He froze as he glanced down to see a kunai pressed up against his neck. Fear started to leak through him as he noticed the girl he was previously watching was now nowhere to be seen, and the scorch marks that were left behind from the fire jutsu also vanished. Trying to calm down his increasing heartbeat, he looked behind him to see the persicating red eyes of the girl he was just observing. He felt the kunai press deeper into his neck as panic spread. "Who are you and why are you watching me? You some sort of perv." Naruto shook his head, sacred beyond belief, and no. I was just passing T through WW when I saw you. I swear, he said frantically. The woman hummed in thought as she finally got a good look at the person she held captive. He was young, much younger than she would have thought from his presence. She sensed him the moment he got in the clearing and waited to see if he was gonna reveal himself or not. When he didn't, she decided to act first. After all, it's not the first time someone was spying on her. And he didn't seem like the pervy type, after all he looked like a normal academy student. She pushed down her shame at putting a kunai to the young kid's neck, and she would have sworn the kid looked a little familiar. She removed the blade from his neck and put it back safely in her pouch, making Naruto sigh in relief. He definitely will never tell Shisui Nissan about this. Naruto looked back at the girl, kicking his feet a little in embarrassment. "I'm sorry, miss. I was training and it started to rain, so I decided to come here. If I knew you were here I wouldn't have come," he said, embarrassed. Not being able to look the tall woman in the eye, she offered him a small smile, clearly amused by the kid's antics. But she did feel a little guilty. No, I should be the one apologizing. I overreacted quite a bit there." Naruto shook his head at her, putting on his biggest smile. "No, I understand. If someone was watching me I would be freaked out too," he said, making the older woman laugh a bit. He put his hand out, extending it to the woman. "I am Naruto Namikaze, it's good to meet you," he said happily. The woman widened her eyes a bit, so that's why the boy looked familiar. Taking in his features once again, the 7-year-old boy resembled his father greatly. The lighting in the clearing made it hard to distinguish all his features exactly. The woman offered a gentle smile before accepting his hand. "I'm Kurenai Yuhi. A pleasure to meet you, Naruto-kun." Naruto felt his cheeks start to burn from the affectionate suffix. He scratched the back of his head as she looked at the boy, amused, taking in his features one more time. "No wonder you're all soaked. I had no idea it was raining," she said before walking past the blonde and back into the wide-open clearing. Naruto followed after her, watching as she performed several hand seals. Illumination factor. Right before Naruto's eyes the whole clearing became clear as day. His eyes going wide as the trees above them opened up, revealing a bright blue cloudless sky. Naruto looked around amazed, not believing what Kurenai had just done. Kurenai turned back towards Naruto, looking into his shocked blue eyes with mirth. How did you do that?" "It's a simple genjutsu. It's still raining in Konoha, so I just made it so it was clear sunny skies for us alone," she explained, and Naruto perked up at the mention of genjutsu. Practically jumping in place. "Wait, genjutsu? Are you good at genjutsu, Kurenai-san?" Kurenai nodded proudly. Her eyes took on a serious note. "Yes, in fact I'm striving to be the #1 genjutsu user in all of Konoha. It's what I specialize in," she said, and Naruto looked up at her in awe. The feeling of pride that Kurenai let wash over her body. She straightened herself as Naruto started to ramble about his own training of genjutsu. As he was talking, she couldn't help but wonder what the youngest child of the Yondaime would be out all alone out here training. Curiosity flashed within her mind as she focused her deep red eyes on the boy as he talked. His tone seemed happy, but she could easily recognize the underlying pain hidden in those endless ocean eyes of his. But regardless of the pain, they held such warmth that she had never seen before, especially not in someone so young. She watched as he brought one of his hands up to scratch the back of his head as he talked, noticing the tic that he had displayed in their earlier meeting. Kurenai smiled slightly at the gesture. The boy had a cute expression when he was flustered. She blinked, finally noticing the black scroll he had in his other hand. And I just can't get this genjutsu down, and I've been trying for the past 5 days. What kind of genjutsu is it? Naruto blinked, handing the scroll over to Kurenai. Kurenai gave a quick thanks before taking a seat on the floor, motioning Naruto to do the same. After opening the scroll, she read over the contents before raising an eyebrow in confusion. Naruto noticed her sudden look. Is everything okay, Kurenai-san? Kurenai nodded, without looking away from the scroll. Where did you get this jutsu, Naruto-kun? Naruto tilted his head at the question. Shisui Nisan gave me this scroll before he left on his mission a few days ago. Kurenai hid her surprise at the mention of Shisui's name. How could she not know who he was? He was assigned as captain to one of her missions a few months ago, and he was one of the best shinobi she had worked with. He listened to the whole team and any ideas that they had, and even supported the team and was open to suggestions. Not to mention him being of Uchiha descent, he didn't act like one at all. Most Uchiha were arrogant and outright rude. Whenever she worked with another Uchiha, they scoffed at her for pursuing genjutsu, telling her it was useless to try and outbeat an Uchiha in genjutsu. Shisui was a polar opposite in every sense of the way. He was kind, humble, and when he was told of her dream he was ecstatic, telling her he hopes to see her at the top one day. Sneaking a glance back over at the worried Namikaze next to her, how did Naruto and Shisui cross paths? Shisui was a pretty busy shinobi, but he seemed to spend enough time with Naruto for the boy to harbor an affectionate nickname for the man. It seems there was more to Naruto Namikaze than meets the eye. She turned the scroll back over to Naruto. What exactly were you having trouble with? Naruto slumped down and looked at the ground, embarrassed. I don't know. I'm using the right amount of chakra and the right hand seals. But when I try to cast the jutsu, it won't work. Kurenai nodded at his explanation. Standing up, she dusted her legs before asking Naruto to demonstrate and try to perform the technique. Naruto nodded hesitantly, before going through the necessary hand seals, pulsing his chakra as Kurenai watched him under a critical eye. After a few moments of nothing happening, Naruto groaned in disappointment, looking down, letting his hair fall into his eyes. I don't get it. I'm doing everything I can. Kurenai softened her gaze at the boy, understanding flashing in her eyes. Genjutsu was indeed one of the hardest shinobi tactics to try and master, which is a main reason more people don't try and learn it after all. But she was pretty certain on why he wasn't able to complete it. I think I know what your problem is. Naruto snapped his head up to Kurenai. Really? What is it? Kurenai took a seat right across the blonde, crossing her legs and putting her hands in a meditative pose. Naruto raised an eyebrow but kept quiet. Genjutsu is essentially the control of one's cerebral nervous system by taking control of all 5 of their senses. We are altering their sensory ability to create false imagery that they believe is real. While in theory it makes sense, it is much more than that, she said, stopping for a moment to make sure that he was still paying attention. But what most people don't understand that in order to appropriately make a genjutsu convincing is the one's understanding of themselves. What do you mean? Insecurities plague all of our minds on the daily. It dwells deep in our minds, refusing to leave, fermenting into depression and fear. By understanding these problems, and coming to terms with who you are as a person, as a shinobi, letting go and accepting will allow your mind to open up clearly. Now Naruto, what is plaguing your mind? Naruto let his eyes go downcast, letting his pain surface up in a moment of vulnerability, refusing to look back up as he tried to gather a single coherent thought that racked his brain. I guess it's that I don't feel like I'm good enough for my family. They always ignore me, or are mean to me. Natsu and Narumi get everything they want and I get nothing. The only training I have is from Shisui Nisan since they refuse to train me. Kurani fought back the urge to gasp as Naruto continued to talk, not believing what she was hearing. Her views on the Yondaime changed by the second, as she looked at the boy with newfound sadness. Her own eyes falling downcast. It's always the same excuse, since Natsu and Narumi are Jinchuriki, they need the extra training and early lessons. They even forget me on my birthday, he trailed off, his voice sound no louder than a whisper. Shocking Kurenai, he raised his head up to look at her, offering her a smile. A smile that was way too bittersweet for her liking. But I'm happy. I have Shisui-Nissan, and now I have you Kurenai-san, he said, his eyes closing, hiding his tears as his smile grew. Kurani pushed her own tears back, looking at the person she couldn't believe was only 7 years old. She returned the smile, although a bit forced. Try and let go of your fears, Naruto-kun. I know it will be hard, and there is no rush, so take it at your own pace. Then Genjutsu will be there for you. Naruto wiped the remaining tears away from his eyes as he looked at Kurenai once more. He nodded his head. She couldn't help but let a single tear fall down her cheek. Reaching her hand out to affectionately rub the tears away from his face. Thank you Kurenai-san. Naruto was pleased to see that his training was coming together rather nicely. His body was 10x stronger than it was last year, and he could easily say he was almost a Genin-level shinobi before graduating. Though it's been 2 years since he started training with Shisui, he could feel that he was improving. And after his fateful meeting with Kurenai in the forest all those months ago, he was able to finally complete the Genjutsu with her help, before parting ways. Kurenai has been more and more busy as time went on, since she was currently undergoing heavy training herself for the Junin exams. Not able to dedicate her time to anything else. Naruto had also increased the weights on his body about 20 pounds. His body started to get accustomed to them, which he concealed under his clothes. When he wasn't training with Shisui, he would usually return to the forest for extra muscle training and ninjutsu. From 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. he would run laps around Konoha. From 12:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. he would practice whichever jutsu Shisui had given him. Then 5:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. would be spent with physical training till his body collapsed. It was an effective schedule since he had only 2 days a week for himself. Shisui occupied his time Monday through Friday. So Saturday and Sunday were his only days to himself. Still, he wasn't completely happy at his training progress, as he would have liked to master the techniques he had learned. His goal was to master a technique until he could perform a jutsu without weaving hand seals. So far he was only able to the basic Academy 3 jutsu without hand seals. The Bushin, Kawarimi, and the Henge, since they were only E rank, they were pretty easy to master. His Genjutsu was improving at a rapid rate. After he opened up to Kurenai at the forest, he felt like a burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He felt more free, not held back anymore. His anger and sadness for his family, while still there, was a lot less than it was before. Going home still hurt a lot, since he had to see and hear the progress that his brother and sister were making while he went to his room unnoticed. He still wasn't sure if he would say he had come to terms with his family's neglect, but having some people who truly cared for him, it made it much easier. It was nice waking up knowing that there were people who are there for you. I'm always shocked by how much you can eat, Naruto. Shisui said as he placed his head in his hands, watching Naruto inhale his 9th bowl of ramen with a mixture of pride and disgust. He looked down at his own empty bowl, silently wondering if he could eat just as much as Naruto. Idnthknthith Juthkanth. Shui scoffed at Naruto before flicking his favorite blonde on the forehead with a chuckle. Swallow before you talk, baka. Naruto nodded before swallowing the remaining food in his mouth, letting out a satisfying sigh as he did so. Patting his stomach happily, thanks for the ramen, Nissan. That really hit the spot. Shisui nodded his head before ruffling Naruto's hair with a smile. Naruto didn't have the energy to stop the older man, instead he leaned into the touch with a grin of his own. Don't thank me, Thank Chuki-san here for making the best ramen in Konoha, he said, pointing a thumb over to the elderly gentleman behind the counter as he placed another steaming bowl on miso ramen in front of Naruto. The blonde's eyes lit up as the now identified Chuki gave a hearty laugh. Not just the best ramen in Konoha, the best ramen in the entire elemental nations. Amen, Naruto yelled, making the three of them burst out laughing, the mood in the store practically glowing with positive energy, like it usually did when Naruto and Shisui stopped for a late lunch or even dinner. After the laughter died down, Shisui turned his attention back to Chuki. So Chuki-san, where's Ayame-san? Finally decided not to work her to the bone, he said with a sly smirk, making the elder wave his hand in defense with a laugh. She's the one who insisted on working here after all, not me. But I gave her the week off since she's been working so damn much, he said, making Shisui nod, glad to hear that she was okay. Chuki snuck a glance back over at Naruto before offering Shui a look of pity. Hey, I know about Naruto-kun's insane eating habits, how about only paying for the first few bowls? The rest would be on the house. Shisui gave the man a compassionate smile before shaking his head, refusing the offer. Sorry, but no can do, Chuki-san. I got paid pretty well for my last mission and it's the least I can do for the kid, he said, making Teki hesitantly nod, hoping the Uchiha wasn't going broke over the blonde boy. Shisui turned his attention back over to Naruto, his smile slowly falling off his face as his look turned melancholic. Is this all I can do for you, Naruto-kun? He thought to himself as he continued to watch the blonde devour his bowl. His mind traveled back to only a few hours ago, before he met up with Naruto. Flashback. But Fugaku-sama, my decision is final, Shisui. The voice belonged to none other than Fugaku Uchiha, the current clan head of the Uchiha clan. The one person that Shisui hated more than anything right now. Shisui clenched his hands, his Sharingan active and spinning widely. Shisui, you are one of the most gifted Uchiha the clan has ever produced. You shouldn't be wasting your time and potential on this village. Fugaku spoke, his voice laced with venom. The mere thought of Konoha causing his blood to boil. You should be proud, knowing full well that the Uchiha name will soon be restored to its former glory. Fugaku said before walking in front of Shisui and placing a hand onto the younger boy's shoulder. Shui had to fight back the reaction to snarl at the elder. Fugaku forced eye contact, his own Sharingan spinning in his socket. This is a wonderful opportunity for the clan, Shisui. We will get back what was rightfully ours. He spoke, his voice darker than ever. His very breath stunk of malice. Shisui shook his head at the clan head, and a coup d'état against the village is the way to do that. A loud smack echoed within the room. Shisui's eyes went blank as Fugaku sneered to his underling. His arm outstretched as his palm connected to Shisui's cheek, wiping it across his face. Don't you dare talk back to me, boy. Know your place within these chamber walls and do as told. You're dismissed, he said, feeling no remorse for what he has done. Shisui schooled his emotions, putting up a stoic expression as he turned his back to Fugaku, turning his head to meet the elder one last time in the eye. It's you guys that have destroyed the Uchiha name. Not Konoha. Then if I may ask, Fugaku-sama, when is the coup d'état taking place? Fugaku smiled, happy to hear that Shisui had finally started to see reason. Not that he had much of a choice in the matter, the whole clan was already preparing for the takeover. In 2 days' time, at midnight, he said, taking a seat, balling his hand into a fist and resting his head, narrowing his eyes. Do I make myself clear, Shisui? Crystal, Fugaku-sama. This is quite an honor, Shisui. Remember where your allegiance lies. End flashback. Shisui clenched his fists tightly just thinking about Fugaku. Scowling as he looked down at the ground, hoping his sudden attitude change went unnoticed by Naruto. Almost every day he had tried to talk reason on Fugaku, then they didn't need to do a coup d'état. That there were so many more possibilities that would be better. But he didn't listen, he never listened to reason. He kept saying it was in the best interest for the clan. That they needed to do this in order to be on top like they deserved. For years now the Uchiha clan was on thin ice with the Konoha council. They were the prime suspects of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's sudden appearance in the center of Konoha all those years ago. Being stated that multiple cases have been showing up giving evidence that the Kyuubi did in fact show signs of the Sharingan, potentially showing the use of an ocular genjutsu while attacking. The Uchiha was forced to give up 35% of all their clan compounds as well as the official closing of the Uchiha military police. Not only that, but they were now getting taxed heavily, about 9% more than the Hyuga clan. While Shisui did feel targeted, since he was a holder of the Uchiha name. He was slightly appreciative that the clan was starting to get put in check. They have become too arrogant and self-centered. The once beloved clan was slowly losing its respectable name. Shisui gave a small sigh. Leaning his head upwards, the clan was now in the midst of planning a coup d'état to overthrow Konoha no Sato, in 2 days. He hoped he would wake up and this would all be just a crazy fever dream. But he still had one plan up his sleeve. Hey Naruto. Naruto looked up to his Nissen and tilted his head, ramen noodles hanging from his mouth with his chin covered in broth. Despite the internal battle Shisui was forced to fight in, he couldn't help but smile at his student. He couldn't help it. Standing up from his seat he threw a hefty amount of bills on the counter, enough to cover the entire bill plus some more, thanking Kyuki for the meal. Come with me. Naruto wiped his face until it was ramen-free as Shisui walked out of the stand. The blonde placed his half-empty ramen door on the counter and quickly left to catch up to his sensei. Naruto was starting to get more and more nervous the longer they walked in silence. In the past 2 years Naruto had never seen Shisui look so serious. It was starting to worry Naruto greatly, but he opted to stay silent until they reached wherever they were going. If it was as serious as it seemed, then he really didn't want to make things worse. Shisui glanced back over at Naruto as they finally reached their destination at Training Ground 7. Walking over to a group of trees, Shisui leaned on the tree as Naruto did the same. The black-haired man looked up into the darkening sky, letting the soft spring breeze wash over his body. One of his hands was in his pouch and was fidgeting with a large black scroll nervously. Looking back at Naruto, he noticed that he looked ready to burst like an anxiety balloon any moment. He grinned slightly as he kneeled down to the boy's level as he ran his hand through the blonde's locks. Naruto started to calm down at the touch as he looked at Shisui, blinking in confusion. You know, Naruto-kun, I'm really glad I met you all those years ago. Naruto brightened up at his Nissan's words, a light pink tinging his cheeks as he nodded enthusiastically to Shisui. Me too, Nissan. I don't know what I would do without you. Shisui smiled at the boy, but on the inside he felt like screaming. He wanted nothing in this moment than to be able to tell Naruto that everything was going to be okay, that if he could he would stop this all and make the world a safer place. But he couldn't do anything. He was hoping, praying that his plan would work. It had to. If not for his sake, then for Naruto's. With a shaky hand he gripped the scroll in his pouch and handed it to Naruto. The boy grabbed it, and before he could ask what it was, Shisui beat him to it. Naruto-kun, he started, making sure he had the boy's full attention before continuing. I want you to promise me something. Naruto quickly snapped to attention. Shisui's voice took a serious edge as his eyes morphed into his Sharingan, looking Naruto deep in the eyes. Naruto gulped before hesitantly nodding his head. Anything, Shisui Nissan. Shisui put his hands over Naruto's as they grabbed the scroll together. Naruto felt Shisui's hands tighten around him, almost desperately. Promise me you will only open this scroll if anything bad happens to me. Naruto felt his eyes go wide, stunned at what his Nissan just said. a look of fear etching across his face. His mind running at a mile a minute trying to process if he heard him correctly. He looked at Shisui, his eyes starting to become glossy. Shisui-Nisan, what's going on, are you in danger? Shisui kept his serious gaze up but his eyes flashed with uneasiness. His Sharingan spinning widely as he pushed the scroll into the boy's chest. No, of course I'm not in danger. He shook his head, looking Naruto dead in the eye. Just promise me. Naruto slowly nodded his head, the grip on the scroll now tightening considerably. As he tried his best not to let the tears fall from his eyes. I promise. Shisui's power over the Shunshin no Jutsu was pure masterful. Mastered to the point where even a Junin would think the man just vanished completely. After his little talk with Naruto, he had dropped the boy back at his house, before using his Shinshin and traveling at almost impossible speed, appearing just outside the Uchiha compound in a small forest area, leaning on the border to the Forest of Death. A scowl formed on his face as he unsheathed his sword, and with a loud scream he sliced the neatest tree nearly in half. He breathed heavily as he looked up in the dark sky. The clan was really going through with it. He observed the clan for weeks. He spied on them and tried his best to stop the elders and their coup d'état. While he knew the Uchiha were cursed with the obsession of power, the cycle of hatred burned stronger in the Uchiha more so than ever since Madara. Though Shisui harbored no love for the Uchiha since their turn of utter hatred consumed them. It was still his family, a family he was born into, raised into and taught. But this last year, the word family left a bitter taste in his mouth. A family. Witnessing firsthand what has happened to Naruto, seeing the downfall of the Uchiha clan with his own two eyes. It wasn't the blood that connected you as family. No, it was the people you care about, the people you swore to protect. The Uchiha weren't his family, the Hokage weren't his family, he only had himself, and Naruto. Suddenly the breaking of a twig echoed through the small clearing. Shisui acted quickly, grabbing his sword as an old man walked out of a bush. The man was old, his hair still full-on black as he wore an oversized white shirt with a green cape covering the right side of his body. He had bandages covering his right eye and an X scar on his chin. He looked over at Shisui. The Uchiha glaring over at him. Danzo, what are you doing here? The now identified Danzo said nothing. He continued his walk until they were about 20 feet apart. The elder, having his eyes closed, fully aware he was facing off against an Uchiha, especially Shisui. Danzo gave out a soft hum before shaking his head slowly. It seems you have failed to negotiate with Fugaku-sama about stopping the coup d'état. Am I correct? Shisui scowled as he tightened his grip around his sword, clicking his tongue in irritation. No, I have one more day and I have a plan to stop this. Danzo hummed to himself as he scratched his chin, his voice eerily calm as he spoke. The mission was quite simple, Shisui-san. You were the key to stopping the coup d'état. Danzo said, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. After a moment he gave a soft sigh of disappointment. Now sadly I have been forced to play my hands into this mess that you Uchiha have caused. Shisui narrowed his eyes at the elder. You said you would let me handle it, he said, giving Danzo a dirty look. You promised. I only promised to leave that Namikaze you are so fond of alone. I merely held a safety precaution if you failed. Shisui glared over at Danzo, wanting to wipe that calm look right off his face. Danzo had always been an enigma to him. Not much was known about the old war hawk. Only he was one of the Sandaime Hokage's teammates and lost the title of Hokage twice. Having a supposed disbanded Anbu squad that called themselves Root. Rumors were that they worked under the Hokage, but their true loyalty lies with Danzo. Koto Amatsukami. Indeed a powerful genjutsu. Danzo spoke. Shisui widened his eyes in shock. How do you? Without warning, Danzo was in front of Shisui, a kunai lodged in his side. Shisui was left in shock and had no time to react to the bandaged hand coming up to his face. Shishu let out a scream of agony as he fell to the ground, his hand around his now empty left eye socket. Blood leaking down his face as he looked up to see the imposing figure of Danzo. A look of utter shock on Shisui's face as he watched the man pull the bandages off his face, showing a 3-tomo Sharingan, holding his stolen eye in his hand before watching it get sealed away into a seal on his arm. "You monster!" he yelled, removing the kunai from his side, not feeling the pain from the sudden adrenaline rush that kicked in. He threw the kunai over at Danzo, forcing him to dodge. Shisui wasted no time performing his shunshin, appearing behind Danzo, sending a swift kick to the elder's ribcage. Danzo smiled wickedly, his new Sharingan seeing the kick and intercepting it with his own arm. Forming one-handed hand seals he in a bunch of air, wind style, great breakthrough. Shisui performed another shunshin, dodging the jutsu. Danzo turned around just in time to duck under Shisui's sword. Shisui, expecting Danzo to dodge, swung his sword into the ground, pushing off the hilt, increasing his speed and sending a swift kick into Danzo's stomach, sending him flying into a large oak tree. Grabbing the hilt of his sword, Shisui pulled it out of the ground and after another quick shunshin rushed after Danzo. Danzo snorted at Shisui, flipping a kunai over his hand, squeezing the handle of his kunai he swung backwards. With a loud clang, Shisui's sword was blocked by Danzo's own blade. Shisui gritted his teeth at the man, applying more pressure to his sword. Danzo sneered, trying his best to hold Shisui back from the sudden pressure. "You bastard. This is the last time I let you order people around. I'll make sure you die by my hand today, you damn thief." Danzo let out a loud shriek of laughter, his stolen Sharingan spinning like crazy, his eyes open wide with sudden glee. "You are a fool. You would think I would just come and attack you for no reason." Shisui gritted his teeth in disgust of the man, suddenly knocking the kunai out of his hand and bringing the sword down, slicing Danzo's right arm. Danzo gave no indication of being hurt, only a huge smile, his bandaged hand coming up and grabbing the sword by the blade. Shisui looked over at Danzo in shock. "You still think you are the only one I gave a mission to Baka? Your whole talk with Fugaku, with so many guards around. I knew you would have failed, that's why right now," he said, forcing the blade out of his arm. No blood leaked from his hand as Shisui widened his now lone Sharingan eye in anger. Appalled by Danzo's sudden hysteria, Danzo motioned Shisui to look up, only to see a large pillar of smoke coming from the Uchiha compound. Shisui almost lost the grip on his sword, a sudden burst of shock entering his veins as Danzo released a displeasing cackle of laughter. Danzo nimbly ducked under the boy's arm before jumping across the clearing, his hand coming up to hide his face, only showing the shape of his Sharingan. Mission details: Uchiha Itachi, slaughter the Uchiha clan starting at 11 p.m. No survivors. Effectively stopping the coup d'état. His laughing getting louder and louder until it was borderline maniacal. Shisui felt his anger grow into pure, deep animosity, his fists going tight as he looked over at Danzo in utter hatred. Shisui charged, both unaware of the thumping of footsteps running their way. Danzo smiled, his cracked expression wide with glee as he aimed a kunai at the Uchiha's heart. Shisui Nissen. Shisui suddenly faltered, his sudden anger turning into fear as he watched a familiar blonde boy race over to him. Shisui suddenly lost his footing, the pain that he got inflicted on him at the beginning now started to resurface. He tumbled forward, watching the kunai come down at him. As Naruto finally reached him. Niisan. All there that was seen was blood. Naruto fell to the ground, a loud death-screeching scream came from the boy's mouth as he held both hands up to his face. His body pulsating rapidly. Blood leaked down Naruto's hands as he gave a loud cry of pain. Shisui raced over to the down blonde, grabbing his shoulders as a few tears leaked from the Uchiha's lone eye. Naruto. Naruto, are you okay? Naruto couldn't even shake his head. The pain was excruciating, his eye was on fire. The blonde's tears mixing with blood making it burn even more. It hurts so much. Naruto cried. Nisan, please make it stop. Please. Please. Naruto begged helplessly. Shisui felt his heart shatter, all thoughts about the Uchiha gone from his mind. Now only occupied with Naruto's safety. Shisui gently grabbed Naruto's hands and slowly moved them away from his face. Naruto whimpered in pain as the cold air blew into his newly formed wound. He gave out a sudden cry. Shisui went pale, a small piece of Naruto's left eye rolled from underneath his hand and across the grass. A sliver of his blue iris mixed with his blood stared right back at Shisui. Shisui felt sick to his stomach. He softly rested Naruto's head against his chest, making sure not to irritate the wound even more. Shisui heard the soft footsteps behind him and turned his head to see Danzo looking at him. The bandages back over his face covering his right side once again. All previous signs of insanity now gone from his facial expressions, now replaced with the diplomatic elder everyone knew. He stayed silent for a moment, kunai still drawn as he walked over until he was behind him. The cold steel resting across the warm neck of Shisui. The Uchiha shut his lone eye, the cries of Naruto echoing throughout the clearing as he clenched Shisui's blood-soaked shirt. If it's any consolation, there was no other way this could have gone, Shisui-san. Shisui shook his head sadly, his free hand softly caressing Naruto's blonde hair. You were wrong, Danzo. There's always another way. You just weren't willing to find it. Danzo shut his eyes, shaking his head at the man's unwillingness to understand. As promised, I will leave the Namikaze child alone. Shisui gave a thankful smile. His lone eye turning upside into a U shape. He gave a soft sigh, awaiting death, ready for its cold touch. But death never came. Suddenly the cold steel left his neck as a loud smack was heard as Danzo was suddenly gone. An array of trees now tumbling down with a trail of dust going deeper into the forest. Shisui looked upwards, only to see a sudden masked figure. He wore a long solid dark blue trench coat with a wave on the front. His mask was a soft pink, only showing a head of straight brown hair. The cloaked man tilted his head at the two people on the floor. He looked around. Traces of blood were everywhere. Trees were destroyed and signs of jutsu were most definitely used. The masked figure bent down until he was eye level with Shisui. The Uchiha looked on in worry for Naruto. He tightened his grip around Naruto, making him whimper again. An action that didn't go unnoticed by the stranger. What happened to the little one here? His voice was surprisingly soft, coming off more feminine. Shisui looked down at Naruto in sadness. He jumped in front of a kunai for me. It completely destroyed his eye. He spoke, letting out a sudden cough in pain. The masked man nodded. He looked back at the young child. He was unconscious, no doubt collapsing from the sudden pain. He pushed his mask to the side, showing a lovely shade of pastel pink eyes catching Shisui's attention. It seems you care very much for this Namikaze child. Shisui stiffened, but was held back by the masked man waving his hand. Don't worry, it doesn't matter to me where he came from. The man spoke silently, putting Shisui at ease. The Uchiha let out another cough as the pink-eyed man reached into his pouch pulling out a small-sized urn. He placed it on the floor and looked back at the Uchiha. He motioned for Shisui to lay the boy down. After a few moments of Shisui not complying, the man sighed. I'm merely gonna heal him as best I can. Shisui reluctantly agreed, laying Naruto flat on his back. The masked man lifted the boy's shirt up, slowly grabbing some ink and writing on Naruto's stomach. Shisui questioned the man in between coughs about the man's method and he looked at him. It's a seal or a? Shisui raised an eyebrow, but stayed silent. The man grabbed the urn and motioned Shisui to put his hands out and grab on. The man whispered to Shisui, making his eye go wide. His lone onyx eye looking at the man in utter shock. But how do you? It's the group I am in. Atarashi. A group formed to fight back against the Akatsuki. That is why, he said, pointing at the urn now resting in Shisui's hand. I have that. Shisui silently nodded his head, not quite understanding the whole situation. He looked back at the prone figure of Naruto. His left eye entirely gone as the blood finally dried around his eye socket. His body felt weak, he knew he wouldn't survive this, he already lost more blood than he should have. Only staying alive for Naruto's sake. Even so, he felt a content smile on his face. He pulled his free hand upwards and around his remaining eye. The masked man watched in silent surprise. With a sudden grunt, and a wet crunching noise, Shisui held out his now closed palm to the cloaked man. The small smile never leaving his face. If you wouldn't mind, please replace his eye with mine. It will be my last gift to him. The man stared at the Uchiha. He's never met an Uchiha that would willingly give his Sharingan to someone. He gave a hum in thought. Coming to Konoha was a good idea after all. Of course. Shisui offered another kind smile and gave the man a soft thank you. Taking the eye from Shisui's palm and opening the urn and placing it on Naruto's stomach. He watched the Uchiha fall to the side, his body now resting directly next to Naruto's. The eyeless man reached his arm out, feeling the soft locks of blonde hair he caressed many times before. I guess neither of us would have ever thought this would ever happen, huh? He said, chuckling to himself. His smile growing wider. I love you, Turtle-chan. You were the baby brother I always wanted. Shisui said, a laugh escaping his mouth. Make sure you train hard. Always eat your vegetables even if you don't like them. He spoke, his voice getting quieter. Please live your life the way you want it. Make friends. Be happy with who you are. He said, his smile growing wider as he felt his life start to fade. There was so much more I wanted to teach you, Naruto. If only I wasn't weak, I would still be here, able to protect you, he said, as imaginary tears cascaded down his eye sockets. He gave a sudden chuckle, his grip trying its best to grab as much of his blonde hair as he could. His eyes shut and his head rolled back. Hey, maybe you're not my little brother, but the son I always dreamed of having. And with that, Shisui Uchiha breathed his very last breath. Entering the eternal silence with a smile on his face, the masked man closed his eyes, mourning for the sudden shinobi that had just passed away. Very few shinobi were like him. The cloaked figure sighed, glad to see the man die with at least a smile on his face. Looking back down at the blonde, he would make sure this boy would live. Weaving through handles, he smacked his open palm on Naruto's bare chest, and one over the blonde's destroyed eye. Secret sealing art. Conceal. Suddenly a bright blue light flashed across the area, blinding anyone in a near-mile vicinity as Naruto's body hunched upwards and a loud scream tore through his throat. This lasted for what seemed like years for Naruto, but was merely just 5 minutes. As fast as it came, it seemingly vanished. The sealing arrays were now completely gone from Naruto's stomach. The cloaked man returned his mask to cover the rest of his face and wiped a bead of sweat off his brow. He looked back at the boy, the urn lying empty on the grass. The masked man gave a sigh as he walked over to the new deceased Uchiha. After a quick fire jutsu, the body of Uchiha Shisui was no more. The masked man respected that particular Uchiha. He would make sure his body didn't get tampered with in death. Suddenly 3 chakra signatures alerted the masked man. With a quick shunshin he left the area almost instantly. As 3 Konoha shinobi came down only to find Naruto's body lying across what seemed like a battlefield. You damned baka. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you not understand how utterly stupid this was? The familiar masked man let out a bored sigh. His pink mask was hanging at his side as his pastel eyes closed in annoyance. His hair now a light gray color, while his eyes stayed the same pink. He moved his hand to his head, shaking his hair making it messy. Yeah, I know what I did. I'm the one that did it after all. He spoke, the last part coming off as a whisper. You don't have to worry, Akira. I know exactly what I'm doing. Akira scoffed loudly and looked over at the cloaked figure. Her amber eyes looked over at him in anger. I don't care if you know what you're doing, you know. You just went ahead and gave this child our most prized possession. The one thing stopping Akatsuki. She barked at him, small beads of spit landing on his face as he remained stoic. The now dubbed Yuno gave a shrug. The intention of Adarashi was on my mind. Now the urn is out of our possession, Akatsuki doesn't know where it is and cannot target us. But you can't just go around and seal. The shinobi world will benefit from my decision. I couldn't have asked for anyone better. Yuno spoke, cutting her off harshly, but his voice remained smooth. He turned around until his back was facing Akira. If looks could kill, Yuno would be a pile of ash right about now. You seem to trust this Namikaze Naruto, a mere child. She narrowed her eyes at the back of Yuno's head. Was there anything you left out of the report, Yuno? Her tone was dark, but Yuno was unaffected. He raised his hand over his head, giving a small wave as a grin played across his lips. Of course not, Leader Sama. Konoha no Sato. The most powerful hidden village in all the elemental nations. Known for its famous shinobi and great economical advances. Harboring some of the strongest clans and bloodline limits that other countries only dreamed of having. But sadly, the village of Konoha had suffered a large blow to her power. Uchiha Itachi, one of the most gifted shinobi that Konoha has ever produced. Graduating the academy at the age of 7, and becoming a full-time Anbu captain at 13. Last week the Uchiha prodigy seemingly snapped, in one night, slaying his whole clan in cold blood. From men, women, and any child he could find. The only known survivor of the massacre was Uchiha Sasuke, Itachi's very own little brother. No one knows the exact reason why Itachi did what he did, but the news spread all around the village like wildfire. It was likely that the surrounding counties had also caught wind of the tragedy that had taken place. Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, had never hated his job more than this past week. The people demanded answers. Every council meeting was getting more and more stressful as they tried to calm down the public. Not only that, but since the fall of the Uchiha, the Hyuga clan had become more arrogant in their attempt to be named the strongest clan. Minato let out a much-needed groan. His hair was even more messy, making his spikes more unruly than ever. His Hokage cape was wrinkled and misshapen. There were large bags under his eyes, showing signs that he was sleep-deprived. He held his head in his hands, closing his eyes just to get a little rest. Sadly for him, it only kept getting worse. His son Naruto has been hospitalized since the beginning of the week. He was found close to 2 miles away from the Uchiha compound. Next to a burning body that they couldn't identify, traces of wind and fire jutsu were used all around the area. He clenched his fists in irritation. He had no idea why his son was over at the Uchiha compound, or how he even got there in the first place. When they found Naruto, he had no damage to his body. Only a large vertical scar over his left eye. It pained Minato to see a scar on his youngest son's body. A sudden pang of guilt rising in him. How could Naruto defend himself if they haven't offered to train him? If Naruto only got away with a scar with no training, then maybe next time. Suddenly an Anbu appeared in the middle of his office, letting his train of thought suddenly break. Hokage-sama, your son has finally woken up, but something is terribly wrong. Minato was suddenly gone from his office. The only trace left was a bright flash of yellow. Hospital room with Naruto. It was dark, so dark that even your shadow had to hide away in fear. Naruto looked around himself in utter confusion. Looking down, he saw his feet were submerged in about 4 inches of water. Naruto let his eyes wander the sudden abyss. There were no signs of life, no walls, just a large empty cavern. The only sound was a small dripping of water drops, one after another, falling down rhythmically, giving an odd relaxing feeling to a tenebrous room. Naruto felt the cold air walk itself over his body as he stepped forward, making him shiver. Each step making the smooth murky water glide across his feet and echo into the chasm. And that's when he saw it, like a thick curtain of darkness that played at a theater. Like the beginning of a play, it opened up, finally shining in a muted array of light. Then a large gust of wind picked up, forcing Naruto to cover his face as his shirt fluttered from the sudden gust. A strange heavy pressure fell onto his body, forcing his knees to buckle. His legs wobbling as his eyes went wide in horror. A lone regal eye stared back at him, like yellow mixed with silver. A proud coin of glory looking at him with an immense amount of pressure. And before he knew it, he was sent flying backwards, a yelp passing his lips as the pitch-black abyss swallowed him whole. Naruto awoke from his hospital bed in a rush. A loud scream forcing itself up his throat and echoing in the white room. All occupants were startled in the room and rushed to his side immediately. Naruto didn't notice they were there, all he saw was red. Sudden flashbacks of what happened racing to his mind. All he saw was Shisui fighting a mysterious man he's never seen before. Him jumping in the way, and Naruto's head suddenly started to throb, his left eye burning. The feeling that it was on fire spreading through his body as the phantom pain of that night returning. He thrashed in his hospital bed, his gown riding down his body as the nurses tried to calm the seemingly hysterical boy down. Suddenly a flash of bright yellow came from the room as the Yondaime Hokage came in to see his son in shambles. His mind went into overdrive and he raced to his son, grabbing the boy's thrashing head in his hands. Naruto, what's wrong? Get away from me. Where's Shisui Nisan? Where is he? Naruto yelled, cutting off Minato mid-sentence. His smaller hands gripping Minato's sleeve trying to pull him away. Minato flinched in surprise at his son's outburst. Naruto clenched his hands around Minato's sleeve, grabbing the Hokage's attention as Naruto finally stopped moving. A soft sob escaped his lips as he looked down at his messed-up hospital bed. Naruto forcefully removed his father's hands from his head, letting his free hand to once again move over his left eye. This time he finally felt what was there. He traced over his eye socket as if it was his first time. He felt soft bumps going up his eye as he got a glimpse of himself in the far mirror of the room. It was a long vertical scar going up his eye, resting just below his forehead. But what shocked him most was the eye that was in his head. He swore he felt it leave his socket. He suddenly grew very pale, the phantom pain now burning his very core. The memories freshly implanted in his brain forever. Naruto looked over to his father, a loom of worry stretched across the man's face as he waited for Naruto to speak. Naruto gave a small sniffle. Where is Shisui Nisan? Minato, slightly curious as to why this certain Uchiha was apparently close to his son. He internally frowned at that thought. The more he thought about it, the less answers he would receive. Both Namakazes were ignorant to the black narrowed eyes looking in their direction from across the room. Naruto, last week the whole Uchiha clan was killed by one of their own. There was only one survivor. Naruto looked at his dad in utter disbelief. The whole clan slaughtered, one survivor. He had a vague memory of Shisui laying down next to him, his mouth moving, but he heard no words. The sudden realization dawned on the boy. Shisui was dead, the only person that cared for him. The only person that treated him with the respect he always wanted. The first person to openly tell him that he loves him. Minato bent down to his son, his hand coming to rub Naruto's head. It's okay, Naruto. Everything will get better from here on out. You still have us. Before Minato could touch his head, Naruto smacked his hand away. His bloodshot eyes glaring at Minato with newfound fury. Us? When has there ever been an us? he screamed, taking the nurses by surprise at his sudden outburst. I don't care about us. All I wanted was to stay with Shisui-Nisan. Minato felt his spine stiffen in shock at Naruto's sudden rage. While some part of him knew he deserved this, the more irrational side of him started to get the better of him. He put on what he dubbed his dad face, and locked eyes with his son. You do not raise your voice at me, young man. I'm still your father and you will show me some respect. Or else what? You're gonna ground me again. Send me to my room without any dinner. Making me apologize for something that Natsu and Narumi did. Or even take away the training you haven't even given me. Minato fell silent at his son's words, a sudden spike of anxiety running through his body as his veins turned to ice. Sadly, Minato couldn't find any fault in Naruto's statement. He tried to rack his brain around for anything that he has done for Naruto, trying to find anything to convince his son that it wasn't true. Naruto looked over at his father in anger, having to bite his cheek from screaming again. All the grief and sadness that he had stored up into his small body was now leaking out in waves. Without waiting for a response, Naruto jumped off his bed and ran out the hospital door in a rush. Needing to get away, Minato made his way to go after him. But one step in, one of the nurses grabbed his shoulder, stopping him. I wouldn't do that right now, Hokage-sama. He's having post-traumatic stress episodes. His body is fully healed and he will be okay. He just needs some time alone. Minato gave a small frown at the nurse's words. Looking at the door with a sad expression, he disappeared in a bright flash once again. With Naruto looked at the crowded streets of Konoha. Looking down at the people happily walking, Naruto felt his eyes go downcast, circling the black scroll that Shisui had given him around his frame, holding it securely. The last thing that Shisui had given him before he died, and he didn't want to open it. It was hard to comprehend exactly what happened that day. Before he went after Shisui, he had a terrible feeling in his stomach. That something was happening at the Uchiha compound. And he was right, now the whole clan was dead. The one person he loved more than anything has died, leaving him. That thought alone made Naruto frown, and he quickly shook his head of his thoughts. Not wanting to get emotional, he knew it would happen one day. But not so soon. Naruto was now at a loss on what he should do. Yes, his sensei was now gone, how will he get the proper training? Someone who took care of him. Sure, he still has notes and jutsu scrolls that were given to him. Hell, he hasn't even scratched the surface on his elemental jutsu training yet. Naruto sighed as he laid back on the summer grass, looking up at the bright blue sky, letting his thoughts wander to Shisui. Hey, you're Naruto, right? Naruto gave a sudden yelp at being addressed out of nowhere. He looked upwards, seeing a boy about his age walking his way. He was wearing a plain gray shirt and black pants. His hair was pulled up in an upwards ponytail, resembling a fully grown pineapple. Naruto looked over at the boy in surprise. He swore he's seen this boy before. Naruto nodded his head as he sat up. Yeah, that's me. The boy took a seat next to Naruto and proceeded to lay down on the grass, his hands resting behind his head as he looked at the sky. I'm Shikamaru Nara, we're in the same class in the academy. Naruto blushed from embarrassment as he raised one hand to scratch the back of his neck. That's why he looked so familiar to him. Naruto gave the boy a sheepish smile. Sorry for not remembering you, Shikamaru. The Nara only shrugged, his gray eyes seemingly more calm than annoyed. It's no big deal. It's troublesome to remember everyone's name anyway. Naruto gave a sweat drop at the Nara's attitude. Naruto looked away from Shikamaru and back up to the sky. So what are you doing here, Shikamaru? This spot in the village is the best for cloud gazing. Naruto tilted his head. He's never heard of anyone cloud gazing. He looked at one of the giant puffy white moisture in the air. His mind flashing to the scream session he had a year ago to the giant blob of moisture. What am I supposed to be looking at? Shikamaru sighed. If he knew there would be this much talking he would have stayed in bed for the day. He pointed up at one of the clouds, grabbing the blonde's attention. It's not really about what you're looking at, it's about how. It's a drag when people force themselves to find some troublesome symbolism when it isn't needed, he said, trapping Naruto into his words. Just look at it how it is. A cloud is a cloud, going wherever the breeze takes it. So free. Naruto digested each word that Shikamaru said separately. Naruto averted his gaze from the cloud and over to Hokage Tower. Just look at it like how it is, Naruto thought as he held the scroll tighter in his hands. Shikamaru observed the blonde through a sideways glance. While the Nara was incredibly lazy, not really outgoing and not really much or a talkative person. He was good at observing people and understanding current situations. Naruto wasn't much of a people person when he was at the academy. Most people ignored him altogether for his two siblings Natsu and Narumi. And that scroll he was holding, his grip was tight. Almost as if he was scared it would disappear any second. He traced his eyes upwards until he saw Naruto's left eye. His skin now adorned a vertical scar over his left eye. It was still a little bumpy. Meaning it was relatively new. And the boy hasn't been seen in the academy in the last week. Shikamaru hummed, the gears in his head turning rapidly. The blonde has been absent from the academy for exactly 1 week, the same week that the Uchiha clan got massacred. While his other classmate, Uchiha Sasuke, was absent made more sense to him, being an Uchiha after all. But Naruto, he had no connection to the Uchiha clan. Shikamaru then raised his eyebrow in speculation. Unless Naruto had a connection to a Uchiha and was at the compound the night Itachi slaughtered his clan. That would explain the blemish that Naruto had over his eye. And the scroll he was holding, no doubt a gift given to him before the fall of the clan. And that entails Naruto's sudden demeanor change. By the looks of it he refused to open the scroll. Shikamaru sighed to himself. He hated how damn smart he was sometimes. Look Naruto, as troublesome as it is. It would be best if you opened that scroll. Naruto looked over at Shikamaru in surprise. The blonde looked at the scroll in his hands and frowned. It's not that easy, it was given to me and I was told to only open it once Shisui-Nisan was gone. Shikamaru was caught off guard by the sudden despair in Naruto's tone. He should have kept his damn mouth shut. Naruto continued, it's hard. It's hard to believe that he really is gone. Shikamaru averted his eyes from the blonde and frowned. Naruto traced the scroll with his hands. Naruto, it's best to remember that this Shisui person left this scroll for you. He knew he was going to leave soon, that's why he prepared this scroll for you, and only you. Shikamaru said as he sat up from the grass. He gave a long stretch before offering Naruto a small lazy smile. I'm going to get home. If I'm out any later I wouldn't hear the end of it from my mother. Troublesome, he said, walking away from Naruto, waving his hand over his head. See ya around, Naruto. Naruto gave a quiet goodbye watching the boy walk off. Shikamaru did make some pretty good points about Shisui. He looked down at the black scroll again. After Shikamaru left he spent most of his time alone trying to muster up the courage to open the scroll. Each minute making him more and more scared. What would be inside it? The sun was now starting to set, making the sky have a bright pink hue as the rays of sunlight shone through the clouds. He took a deep breath. With shaky hands he flipped it open. 2 small puffs of smoke erupted from the inside, making Naruto cough slightly in surprise. Waving his hand to help rid the smoke from blocking his vision. Another scroll was now seen. This one was much larger and it was red in color. In his other hand was a letter. Naruto felt his heartbeat start to quicken. He felt his eyes become glossy as he gripped the paper in each hand, and began reading quietly. Dear Turtle-chan. Hey Naruto, how are you doing? I hope you never have to open the scroll I gave you, but if you are reading this now then yes, I am dead. I hope you can one day understand why I had to write this letter, and I'll start with telling you the truth. The Uchiha clan, for the past year, had been planning to overthrow Konoha in a coup d'état. I was tasked with a mission to spy and help the village stop the clan before it was too late. If my fears have come true, then either the coup d'état has already happened, or I had to take matters into my own hands. Naruto-kun, I'm so sorry I dragged you into this mess. I just wanted you to have a good childhood. After the very first day we met, I knew you were someone special to me. But now, Naruto, I leave with you my signature jutsu scrolls. In that red scroll are all the more advanced water jutsus I could find to suit your style. But the main one is my secret to the Shunshin no Jutsu. I hope you can master that jutsu to levels that I only dreamed of. Naruto-kun, now is the time where you can live your life. Make your own choices, be who you wanna be. And always remember, no matter what you do, who you become. You will always be my little brother that I love no matter what. Love, Shisui Nisan. Naruto couldn't stop the sudden tears that fell from his eyes. Each drop falling onto the letter softly, making Naruto sob into his hand. I love you too, Shisui Nisan. I'll make sure to become a shinobi you will be proud of. Naruto suddenly froze, his heart going numb as he walked into his house. He saw his family all in the backyard, the slider door open letting a cool breeze travel into his home. The scroll Shisui had given him almost slipping from his hands as he looked at his family outside. His mother was smiling happily, his father had a proud look on his face looking down at Natsu and Narumi. Naruto heard his mother's happy voice echo into the house, making him shiver. I'm so proud of you too. It's not every day that two 8-year-olds graduate the academy early. Naruto's heart threatened to stop beating right then and there. His eyes were wide, the sudden burning sensation returning as he saw the setting sun shine down on his siblings' brand new Konoha headbands. Naruto felt a newfound rage gloss over his eyes. The anger trying desperately to block out how inferior he was feeling at seeing his siblings already become shinobi so early. The day he loses the most important thing to him, they get to graduate and become shinobi. The boiling sensation in his skin was almost too much to bear. He wanted to scream, yell, hate them. He was unaware of the sudden change to his left eye. Gone was the sapphire blue that everyone was used to. It was now replaced with a dark crimson. His pupil now pitch black with 3 tomo spinning inside. The Sharingan. So friends, this was episode 1 of this emotional and powerful story. If you enjoyed it and want episode 2 soon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down your thoughts. What kind of Kekkei Genkai do you think Naruto awakened, and how will it change his future? I'll see you in the next episode.